Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Tonight we have with us Richard Moschella. He is a prolific author. He writes on many, many topics and phenomena, as well as someone who's very gifted in being able to connect with your loved one. And not only that, he did a demonstration on me tonight, which was not planned, by the way, and I think you're going to find that to be very interesting because he was spot on. And so, to my surprise, this man who I've never met before, very, very gifted. But before we get into that interview, why don't we take just a moment here and learn just a little bit more about my special guest this evening, Richard Moschella. My guest this evening is Richard Moschella. Richard is a paranormal investigator, mediumship spirit artist, and author at not only Beyond the Fray Publishing, but Amazon and Barnes & Noble. He has released numerous books on spirit communication and his encounters on his journey in the paranormal research field. Since childhood, he has been connected to those on the other side of the veil, and it wasn't until adulthood that he fully accepted his quite interesting and unique ability. He has read everything he could to get his hands on to expand his knowledge on metaphysics, paranormal, and mediumship development. His knowledge transcends all aspects of the paranormal world, from cryptic creatures, aliens, UFOs, UAPs, and much more. For over 10 years, Richard has worked with trained and incredible lightworkers, healers, intuitives, psychics, and mediums. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and enjoy yourself as we go head on head with my special guest, Richard Moschella. Well, good evening, Richard, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is exciting. I'm so glad to talk to you. Very interesting guy. Lots of books out there on every topic you can imagine. And so we're going to have a really good conversation tonight, and I appreciate you being on. So, as always, the foundation question. I'm not ever going to deviate from that because I think it's important that people understand that not everybody has an experience at X number of age. Some of them actually come into this when they're older. When did you either have an experience or become intrigued with, and was it something paranormal, otherworldly? You bring us into that world way back when.
Way back, right? So I was a kid of the 80s. I was born in 82, and I remember my earliest memories is hearing my family have conversations when they would gather at parties, sitting around the table. And we would be by the kids' table, and I would gravitate towards the grown-ups because I would want to hear these stories, even though they would give me sleepless nights and I would be scared out of my mind. But my dad, my mom, other aunts and uncles would share stories about things that happened within the family, about my grandmother seeing spirit, from my grandfather visiting in spirit and letting them know something was going to happen. And this contact that our family had, I would hear these stories. And yes, I wouldn't sleep for days, but these stories would stay with me. So now as I'm starting to get a little bigger, I start going to the library. But there was that little darkened corner, and there was maybe about 20 books. And there were books from the Warrens, Hans Holzer, Whitley Strieber. I wanted to learn about aliens. I wanted to learn every aspect of the paranormal. And I found it there in the library. We didn't have no search tools online that we can type in a button and have all the information. We had to read. We literally had to find that little darkened corner wherever you lived and read those books. Mm-hmm. And then I started to go on, these investigations with local kids, and we would try to go to the cemeteries and see if we would see an orb. And it was around this time, too, going into the 90s, I found shows like In Search Of and all these paranormal documentaries that I would be so engrossed with and see these, different episodes featuring different prominent figures in the paranormal field and hearing their take on things. Mm-hmm. But it's also in this time that I started understanding my family's connection was also handed down. And this being so accepted to talk about the paranormal, and it was okay to see spirit and sense spirit. You're not crazy. Grandma did. I do. So I remember like 8, 9, 10 years old being in my living room by myself. My mom and dad were, downstairs. They're doing other, and I would hear the door handles start jiggling. Mm-hmm. I would feel, I would be laying in bed at night and actually feel hands pressed down on the comforter and know that someone was literally standing above me and just pulling the covers over my head saying, go away, go away, go away. And there's tons of those stories throughout my childhood. And then it really isn't until I'm probably in high school that I started saying, you know what, I don't care what people say. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just start embracing this, trying to learn more about this ability that I have and learning how to turn it on, how to turn it off, and how it works. And really, from the beginning, having accepting parents and accepting family that embraced the paranormal, giving me that outlet to read about it, to find these documentaries like Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, In Search Of, Sightings. That was another huge show that was great at the early 1990s. And then just going full throttle when I got into high school saying, I want to study with mediums. I want to learn about chakras. I want to learn about energy, and finding people that were willing to teach. And throughout that journey, I will tell you this, Kel, when you're ready, the teacher appears. And it's amazing how people just got placed on my path at certain times to encourage, to say, read this, take this class. You don't have money for this class? Don't worry. I'll let you in for free. I just want you to be a part. All these little nudges, right, led us to the place we are right now. And I truly feel people are placed on our path to help us grow and learn and turn us into the people we are today. So It started way back then. Thank God for my parents being accepting. A lot of parents out there would be like, you're nuts. Yeah. There's no such thing as ghosts and aliens. But it started then and it's still going. I'm still reading. My wife, when she sees these books come in every, week, oh, he has a new book, I always want to keep learning. I always want to keep learning and just growing within the field and sharing all these different perspectives that we have as researchers and hearing your take on something and hearing their take. I think we should be that sponge and just never stop learning.
Well, I agree with you. And I grew up opposite of you. It was very much church. It's either a spirit or a demon. And right. No, there's no such thing as, and it's your imagination. And actually, like you, having people being placed in front of you at certain times, I have had, it started out with having my clairs being placed in front of me during various times. I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment. And so back then, I had no idea what was going on with me. I thought, I had ulcers. I did have an ulcer. I did, and I was nervous Nelly because of, what things that go bump in your grandparents' house when they're not home, right. Kind of thing. And it's your imagination, or it's the old house, it creaks, or this or that, and always passed off. And even to this day, like in doing this show as an example, I'm not out to prove anything to anybody because I have more skeptics that are in my life than I've got a lot of paranormal friends, that sort of thing. But I'm talking about my immediate family. I'm talking about some of my best friends. They don't believe in this stuff still. They're like, don't talk to me about it. This is demons work, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, anyway, and then I was just having that conversation with somebody about a month ago, that not only do I understand now where my clairs come from, and again, I'm going to shift this back to you in just a moment,
Sure.
but I have also been placed, and I started recognizing that in positions of visibility that normally I would never have gone after on my own. I would be thrown into them, cover of a magazine, interviewing Skinwalker Ranch gentlemen out in Utah, George Norrie, Coast to Coast, all these certain things. And I'm sitting here lately going, how interesting! How interesting that we're being placed now in front of people that have a large visibility. Let's go back to you, Claire wise. I know what my clairs are. What kind of clairs do you think you have or have grown into?
Well, my clairvoyance is very strong, especially doing mediumship spirit art where I see. And how I like to explain how clairvoyance works, at least for me and possibly for you, is it's not like physically all of a sudden there's a woman standing in front of me and she's playing this game of charades. How it works is it's almost like a daydream happening in my mind. So for somebody watching, I would say, think of what you did last weekend. You could see it. You could see if you were at your son's basketball game, you're sitting on the bleachers, he takes a shot, you look at the audience, what jacket a person was wearing, what someone was eating. You start seeing that, right? And that's playing in your mind's eye. So for me, when I go into a location or I'm reading for a client, they sit down, I open up, I say, Spirit, come close. And all of a sudden, this imagery starts playing like a movie. And I'll start asking Spirit, what did you do in life? And I'll start seeing where they lived. I'll see if they lived in an apartment, a house. And I'll start gathering this information for the reading. So that's through clairvoyance, but also through smell, through taste, through just definitely knowing. Sometimes I'll just have that knowing and I'll be like, man is a cigarette smoker and he, and we're right in the lungs with him. And he has that raspy, rattle all the way up into the end. And I know he's, you'll have that definite knowing. Sometimes smell, you'll be doing a reading or you'll walk into a location and you'll smell flowery perfume or a very potent cigar or even a little bit of brandy, and you want to talk about liquor. Through all those senses. Hearing is another one. Sometimes you'll hear music playing that isn't playing that everyone else is hearing.
Yeah.
So it's just being open, and you don't have to go in there and label it like this clair is going to work today. Just be open. Spirit, come close and see what works for you, because even as we grow as mediums, sometimes our clairs change.
That's right.
You'll find certain clairs get stronger, certain clairs might get weaker.
Right.
There's definitely ways to, I think, turn them on and make sure that they're strong. And that's through meditation, knowing how to work with energy, learning chakra work and balancing. And that's a whole nother thing. But I just tell anybody, if you're getting involved in any aspect of trying to feel what your clairs are, you kind of sit in a room, spirit come close. You could go to a historical location that you've never been at with a pen and pad and do the same thing, spirit come close. And see what information starts coming through and how it's coming through. And at those locations, it's great because you could always go back to the docent or to the history books and see if the information you were getting matches up with the location. And that's another way of checking what's coming through. That's kind of fun for anybody who wants to test their psychic or mediumship abilities, is see what comes through. Sit down with a friend, and say, let me see if I can read you, and open up and see how your clairs work. And you'll see there's certain ones who are going to be stronger at certain times, but I'll never say one's always good. Usually things happen. Spirit has a way of showing you their intelligence and finding a way to make you smell flowers, because that's going to make that person sitting across from you be like, my mom loved peonies. She loved the smell of rose. And when you mention that certain flower, they know what to give you to get that message across. Mm-hmm. So always be open, trust in spirit, because spirit is so intelligent. And through every reading I do, every location I go to, they find a way to get that message through that really hits that sitter or lets that location know that it's definitely them there. And they use all those senses to do that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that I want to ask you kind of a two-part question here. So I want to just go back to your parents just for a moment.
Sure.
So I know I just learned in my family that from a cousin, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I had revealed to her that I was into this paranormal stuff, and I asked her if she knew anything about this and her family, or my first cousin. She says, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, our grandmother, our mutual grandmother, used to talk to her mom about how they thought there was some maternal sensitivity back in their line." So, in your family, did you have your parents or your grandparents, because they're so open to it? Because everything was nope. You have to find this out the hard way, and then you wish you could ask questions, and they're gone. But did your parents or grandparents have abilities?
My grandmother on my father's side of the family was very in tune with what was happening. She had visits from her mother that had passed away, standing at the foot of her bed and trying to grab a hold of her, and said she felt her arms were cold and clammy. Mm-hmm. And she held on to her and would scream so people would hear that she grabbed hold of her. And when people would come in, she would just be screaming with her arm outstretched, like if she was holding something invisible. Mm-hmm. So it's those stories that were told at that table where I would hear this story and be like, oh my God, Mm-hmm. But as I got older, she would start confiding in me a little more and start telling me more about seances that they would have, and really, opened my mind up to the broader, range of what's happening, that it's not just these little incidents. I mean, there's a whole paranormal world. There is a spirit world that's around everyone and everything. I don't think that they're in this far away place, and it's easy. They're not far away. And talking to her and sitting down with her and hearing this, and hearing how when she asks for help or signs, you get them like this, because they're here. That consciousness never dies. Mm-hmm. And having these conversations with her still affects me today, even though she's passed away now for over 20 years. You think back and you're like, she was just planting those seeds, and just letting me know, again, people, right place, right time, just giving you that encouragement to grow and to embrace it. Mm-hmm. For the longest, though, I've called it we say, well, we have a gift, right? And the last 5 years, I started changing that around. I'm like, you know what? The more I read, it's not a gift, it's an ability. And what I mean by that is we are all born with the muscle, but you need to learn how to grow the muscle, how to embrace it, how to use it. And it's just like going to the gym. We go to the gym because we want to build our physique. We want to work on certain. The same thing with your mediumship and psychic abilities. Once you trust in it and you say, I do have this ability, okay, that's one hurdle. But then there's other hurdles that come up is, how do I work on it? How do I strengthen it? Mm-hmm. Okay, what do I need to know about how it works? Do I need to learn about energy? Do I need to learn about chakra development? Do I need to learn about meditation? And all these little aspects keep strengthening it, showing up, sitting in mediumship circles. A huge thing, sitting with people that are like-minded, that are all working on mediumship at a beginner level. You start building your framework, okay, on how it works. Learn how to educate yourself on how the unfoldment process is. And this is all stuff I started getting from people after my grandmother that were put on that place and started teaching me and telling me, this is how this works, and this is how channeling works. And, and it's a continuous process, where we're continually learning and growing and developing. And I was blessed. I was born to the right set of parents, the right family that encouraged it, because vice versa, you could say, oh, you're a schizophrenic, or right. And again, you're not embraced and you're shunned, or don't tell anybody that you're able to do this. Or
exactly.
You're crazy. There's a lot of people that get that aspect of it. So,
yeah.
We definitely have to embrace it and foster it and say, let's see what this is and how we can use this to help. Because ultimately what this is letting people know that the consciousness that was their loved one, the light that made them who they were, doesn't die in physical death, that it goes on. And through right mediumship that that you're able to connect with, it proves that. Because when you bring in forth that evidence-based mediumship, where you could tell somebody how someone lived, what they did, that brings that person back. And it brings them back where they can leave that reading and at least know there's no way that he could have knew that about mom or dad or your sister or brother. And that's what this is. This is healing. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't, trying to get clicks. We're in this. If you're doing anything with spirit work, you're in this to prove the continuity of life and to show people that their loved ones are only a thought away, that consciousness is there. Ask for signs. Talk to them. We lose the physical, right? But the spiritual is always there. The essence of who they were continues. And that's what we do in all of our work. And I've been blessed to work with people that help me understand that more. So we all have that ability.
So I have a question for you, or more like an observation. So I do talk to a number of individuals who have an ability and to be able to connect with, I don't know if you believe in this, the Akashic records, the file of somebody. And so I have had a gentleman on. I've had a number of people on, but this gentleman in particular was really pretty good at being able to access this Akashic record and all that. And he's also like, yes, your loved ones are here and all that. Some people say my loved ones have never showed me a sign, or they've never been around, or maybe they just weren't observant enough to see the sign. But I am just really flabbergasted. And before I go into my next thought, I'm going to have to just give you a forewarning. I do have something with me, literally right now. There's an energy presence in this room. And it's been nagging at my doorstep here literally for the last 5 minutes. So if something were to happen and anything, or you see something fly behind my head or whatever, just we will continue. We will keep rolling, just in case, because sometimes they get so close, or they're so intrigued by you, or they're intrigued by me, that they actually affect my electronics. So that's just a side step. Sorry, everybody, but I am there's an energy pull in here right now it really wants to be noticed. So you're noticed. All right. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So the thing is that people do wonder, oh my goodness, they must have looked that person up on the internet. They always want to use that as the first thing of being skeptical. But, it is amazing. Some people feel like they never do have anybody reach back or whatever. What do you say to people like that?
Well, you have to be open to it. You can't be closed-minded. Some people, when they come into a reading, you start folding your arms like this, and you kind of prevent that energy from flowing. I always say sit with your hands down at your side. Be open to the process. You could be a skeptic and come in. Okay, but don't go in there saying, well, I need you to prove it to me.
Right.
That can come through with just the signs, the symbolism that comes through, because symbolism is huge, and it's being open to what comes through. So if you're closed-minded to the fact that you're not letting nothing in, you're going to walk away with nothing. Be open-minded. And establish a sign. I had a client about a week ago come in and say, my husband wants to come in and sit through the reading with me. I go, now listen, somebody sits in with you, I might start reading them. So I just, fair warning, comes in, I do the reading, and the woman goes, okay, you hit on some amazing things. And she goes, is there anything else at the end that, you could get one more thing? I go, okay. Well, when I was driving here, in my mind's eye, a bag of pierogies came down to my mind's eye, and it's sitting there. My last name's Moschella. I don't think about pierogies, okay? I think about pasta, meatball, but a bag of pierogies is sitting in my mind's eye. So I go, okay, bag of pierogies, and it's the ones that you buy at the store in like the Ziploc. And she goes, oh my God, we were just talking about his mother's recipe for pierogies. And, we've been trying all these different things, and we can't get pierogies that taste like hers. I go, she knows you're buying the frozen bags. I go, make them yourself. And she started tearing up, and he walked out of the room. He was like, okay, sold. It was that little piece of evidence that drove it home. That's why I say spirit's intelligent. They know. So even if you're that kind of skeptic, be open to it. Ask for a sign. Ask for something specific. Winnie the Pooh, something that comes down that really connects with that person, that person that's doing the reading has no way of knowing. No way of knowing. And this was proven to me through other readings where I'm driving home from work, going to the reading right from my job. And I see a 1980s Garfield suction cupped on a car window on Route 80. And I go, what? And it's in my mind's eye. And I then see in my mind's eye a man in my passenger seat, big hands, big man. And I get the visual. I go, okay, you got to stay with me. We're going to the reading. I said, this is definitely for the client. I bring up Garfield. I go, suction cup Garfield on a car. She goes, no. She goes, but my grandfather lived in Garfield, New Jersey. And I lived in Lodi, which is right next to Garfield. So if he showed me the town of Garfield, I would think I was just thinking about being home on the streets that I lived on. But because he showed me the Garfield, I knew to hold that piece of evidence and present it to his loved one and just prove that continuity, that he brought up Garfield. There's no way that I would know Garfield, but he used the Garfield doll to do it. So Spirit's very intelligent.
So that brings me to the next question, the question that everybody wants to always know. Are they really there with you? I'll give you an example. Well, I could give two examples. My dad, when he passed away, I had many signs from him, including in my classroom, the telephone ringing, the smells that he used to smell like when he came in from the barn, knocking over his pitcher, which was relevant to something was happening at the time with this and that. So I knew all this stuff. I could pick it up. I was very observant. But again, people aren't sure if they're really hanging around. Like right now, I haven't really felt my dad in a while, because I really haven't really, I mean, there are times I'll talk to him or whatever, but people are so, they just don't believe that somebody is still hanging about, like they might have gone on to do bigger things or whatever, and it just kind of fades. What are your thoughts about that?
They're still there. Sometimes people say, I don't feel like they're always around me. Well, they're doing work on the other side too. And I compare it to when you call your, mom or dad now, and, there's a chance that they might not pick up the phone. Why? Not that they don't want to talk to you, but they could be doing something, but they'll get back to you. And the same thing, when you come into a reading, sometimes people are dead set. I want mom. You want somebody else, and you're not accepting nothing else. So you come into this reading, and all of a sudden your neighbor Frank comes through that, looked after you when you were a kid. And you're getting all this stuff about the house you grew up in, and, stuff about, and you're like, I don't want that. Well, it's kind of hard to make mom come through if mom doesn't want to come through.
Right.
We could try to work the reading and say, Mom, if you could give us some, and I'm very strong with evidence. Okay. I don't want to know mom loved roses. Mom loves you. Well, what made mom her? Okay. What can mom bring through? And if she's not showing me anything that I consider evidence-based information, I'm not presenting that to my client because I feel it's just too loosey-goosey. We want stuff that really validates who we're communicating with. So if I get mom, she's showing me small little earrings, little pearls that, somebody would have right now. Okay. She's showing me that she had this bracelet. And it's pretty big. It's almost like gaudy, okay? And then we'll start describing what it looked like. She also wore something around her neck. It's not a crucifix, but it was a chain that she always had with her. And then she's also showing me that she had a small white dog. And it's those little aspects that really start filling up the evidence, okay, of who she was. What kind of work does she do? Do you see her working with her hands? If so, are there paper? Is she working the land? Let's look at that. So I always say, if you're communicating, try to get as much information from the spirit that you can that's evidence-based. And that makes the work that we do more credible and more, up to par than just a very loosey-goosey reading of saying, dad's here and he loves you.
Have you ever, because have you ever seen, I would consider you quite a beacon because, you've got abilities that would speak to the fact that you've got the ability to also attract energies that may not be related even to your readings or anything like that. Have you ever visually seen an apparition show in front of you before, whether it's in translucent, solid, or mist type form? And what do you think they wanted?
I've seen shadows. I've seen shadow figures. I've seen orbs floating in the woods. We did some investigations where we go out into the woods and we talk to like the elementals. We deal with nature spirits, and we bring our attendees out there and we talk about connecting to the land itself. You don't always have to be in a haunted location. Mm-hmm. And there were a few attendees that actually saw small orbs just floating among the trees, and then they would just dissipate and just disappear. And we were miles in the woods from where cars would be, on a trail, and there would be no light source like that. They're not fireflies. You would see those flying around, but these were little balls of light that would just flicker and just go out. So we've seen stuff like that. Like I said, I'm in locations out of the corner of your eye, you see a shadow move. I've yet to see a full body apparition stand in front of me and go, "Hello, Richard," but it happens through my mind's eye. Even sitting in for getting ready to talk to you, I have a man that came through that I sketched down on a piece of paper here that I wanted to, just even talk to you about even when we get off this call, because, he was very strong in coming through with the image and the imagery. And that happens when I meet people. All of a sudden I'll see a person and I'll be like, "Listen, I want to talk about like a hardworking man. He took care of his family. He worked hard. He showed me very well worked hands. He's showing me land. He's showing me that it's even like, I'm looking after a lot of land." He passed. He wants to talk about passing before his wife. He's showing like 4 kids that we're like focusing on 4 kids, and they're all over. Very strong work ethic. Lungs. I'm drawn to his lungs at the end, having a lot of hard time breathing. There's breathing issues. There might have even been oxygen with him. And big man, you had to get through him, and then I drew him like this.
Interesting. I can tell you that who you're describing now. I would say that if I showed you the picture of who I photographed in the screen window, which was a little girl and a man, I would say that you could pretty much put the frame of that face of him in there. Who you're describing is my who I'm looking at actually right now. My great grandfather. His name's Emil. He is a hardworking man. He came over on the boat with his father, who unfortunately committed suicide in later years in life, but he did pass before my great grandmother. He had pneumonia. He was out clearing out a ditch, and my great grandmother died later on of cancer. And I have the bed I believe that she died in, and I have the picture of the children on the wall. And yes, that is correct. Let me count how many kids, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, technically 5, technically 6, because one came in as a foster kid. Two of them died, and the 3 boys lived. And and I'm looking right at the picture and his violin, by the way. If you know anything about that violin, I'm all over you, because I can't figure out. I was told it was a gift to him for some work that he did. He was a carpenter, or I don't know if he actually played the thing, but it's on my wall. So
I almost want to say that it's showing me that it is like an heirloom that goes older, though. Older back. I almost want to say like 1860s, and it might have even been in like Civil War time, because I almost want to go that old with it. I'm seeing like that in my mind's eye. So if that helps you with like that object, I want to say it's been handed down a few times.
Yeah. Well,
okay? It's not new.
No,
okay.
No. I've literally, during the estate pickings when my dad passed away, I never even knew he had that my great grandfather had a violin, and he barely talked about it. And it's just like, I'm looking at that violin, and I'm telling you, when we were looking at the table full of things, my eyes went not only right to this violin, my whole body electrified and lit up like you could not believe. And I kept hearing, you need to have that violin. That violin needs to be with you. That violin, and I thought, I don't know what this is, but I get it very rarely. But I just could not get that violin off my head, off my mind, and I bought it off.
And the importance of like the music, I even feel like that's something that like he would have appreciated, like listening to it, and that's also the attachment with it. So I would, even being like clairaudient when hearing things, have you ever heard it like, like strum or?
No, I don't have that. No, I don't. Well, okay. I did not hear it strum, but when I was being watched by a caretaker, because I had a major surgery, she heard some scratching in another room, and she went into the laundry room where at the time he made the case for it. It's very obvious he made the case. He wrote his name in it, and the thing was laying there, but not without the, anything. And she told me, and she said, there was scratching coming from inside that case of that violin. And I'm drugged up and, trying to,
Yeah.
But it was just like, that's the only type of what she heard coming from the violin case. And I've got the case in my closet, but no, I haven't heard anything because I couldn't figure out if he ever really played it. I don't know, so.
I almost think it was something that was just handed to him that he just would put out, or I feel like he might have picked it up and like messed around with it, but I don't feel like there's any learning there. I don't feel like he learned how to play it, but he had an appreciation for the instrument. I almost want to say it goes back to when he was a kid.
Yeah.
I almost want to say like his mother really would have liked music. And he's kind of like the same mold as his father, because I'm almost seeing like the ancestry timeline, and it's almost like they were the same mold, hardworking, earth tilling kind of people. But it's hard life too. It's not easy. So I feel like towards the end, there's an appreciation for seeing like my family has it easier now.
Yep.
And not to get into a full like reading for you. I'm sorry, but like this is how it works, because when somebody sits in front of me, or as I'm sitting down for something, all of a sudden these images come through, and information starts coming through, and I always have a pad and pen, because that's how I channel it. And as you were sitting here and you're saying, I feel a strong presence, I'm like, yeah, you do.
I do.
And as we're going along, and with the perfect question of how does it work? This is how it works. This man is real strong, just wanting to know that like he's still around. And this would be your great grandfather.
Yeah, I'm pretty obsessed with him. I don't know why. I'm the genealogy. I'll give you just a snip, and then maybe it'll more will come together here. So I'm telepathic. I learned I was telepathic because of him, and the little girl that was in the window. And so, long story short, tornado ripped through this rural property. He built this house with his bare hands, with his dad and all this, and very much of its time. And I wanted to go to the house because my grandmother was passed down to his son, and he had other sons, but this one son took over the property. And then my grandmother I think she had just passed, so I was concerned. So I went to this house in rural land, right, farmland, and trees were down. Nothing ever touched that house. I'm going to tell you right now, nothing ever fell on top of that house. It was very bizarre. And the whole place electrified. And the limestone base is what I feel helped that electrification. I was there by myself. I walked around, couldn't get into the house. I wouldn't go in there anyway because too freaked out of hauntings, but went around the house and I started shooting pictures. And back then you could go and get them developed in the store. Okay. And so I didn't see anything in the window at the time. And that's why I'm going to show you. I'll send you that picture after. And so you can see what I'm talking about. And so I noticed in the pictures, thumb. I was looking for something, I don't know. And I noticed this ball. It looked like a small ball in the upper window. And I said, well, how did that ball get up there? Because there's no way a ball can sit on a ledge. There's no ledge up there. And that's when I bought my first laptop. That's when I blew up the picture. And that's when I came to realize that it was a little girl looking at me, and above her was, there was always a debate about whether it was Emil, my great grandfather, or whether it was her doctor, because her doctor was so distraught. She died at 10 of the scarlet, whatever was going around at the time. And he was just so distraught that he lost her and all this. So there was always a debate for years whether it was, him or Emil. Okay. So I went back to the property and I stood on the lawn and I looked at the window and I said, you have my attention. I can't see anything in there right now, but you showed to me in this picture. What's your message for me? And I'm electrifying. Sorry, I'm tingling all over. The message was the genealogy is wrong. And I stood there and I'm like, what are you talking about? Now I'm the genealogist of the family. The little girl's name is wrong. And they were right. The name wasn't Lily. The name was Mary, and she showed it around age. She died at 10, but she looked about more like 6 or 7 in that picture. She was smiling right at me. He's looking right at me from that window like, who are you? And she was looking at me like little kids just love me. But anyway, recognize me. So the thing is, that's when I learned I was telepathic, and that was actually the moment that I turned around and started my journey of going to haunted bed and breakfasts, and was really obsessed because I felt like if I could get a message from them, who else is going to give me a message? And then it got carried away, and now to this day I can't turn anything off, and things come to me all the time. But that's Emil that you're talking about, because he had pneumonia and the whole 10 yards. Yes, when you see the picture, you'll be able to match it up pretty closely to that, by the way. You will be able to match it up pretty closely. That's amazing. And keep in mind, everybody, Richard and I are just meeting here for the first time. I haven't talked to him until this interview at all. So you're quite amazing.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little. That was great. That was wonderful.
Very strong presence. I give him full credit, especially being that strong enough to come through, knowing that we're sitting down. As I'm sitting here getting ready, I'm like, I have to put you down on paper. So, and I was going to do that when we were off camera, but you were saying about the strong presence you felt with you. I'm like, oh, we need to talk about you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad you did, because it also validates the fact that this was not planned. And I stare at his violin and the picture of his beautiful property every day, and I'm obsessed with him. I don't know why I'm obsessed with him and his family, but I have a really deep feeling of that whole thing. And a presence.
I would love to get this out to you. So when we're done with the interview, I'll send it out.
Oh, no, that'd be great. And I'm going to send to you, I'll show you the photograph. You'll see the little girl, you'll see him, and you'll be able to match it up too. So that was good. Good job, Richard. So I want to ask about UFOs and stuff like that, or otherworldly experiences, because Richard and I were talking before the show, just briefly. You brought up a story, and I'm going to ask you a question regarding it, and I'll probably share what happened a little bit with me and then ask you the question. Tell everyone that story you're telling me about that car and those people.
Yeah, when I was writing my book, Extraterrestrials in the Hudson Valley, and it actually turned out to be another book, too, that I'm working on currently. Mm-hmm. I was dealing a lot with abductees and hearing stories, and a few friends of mine that were mediums and intuitives said, Rich, I'm getting a lot of like ET vibes with you. And it's crazy because it brought back a memory from when I was a kid. I'm outside playing, and I remember just feeling the sense of someone watching you. And I remember seeing this old car come up, and it stops in the street. And this man and a woman are in, the driver and passenger seat. They turn their head, and I remember seeing it. It's almost like a movie playing, and they turn their heads and they look at me. And I felt scared. I felt scared like they were going to take me. So I remember I ran into the apartment bushes that were outside, and I said, I'm going to hide in here so they don't see where I went. And I remember hearing the footsteps on the concrete sidewalk, And as they're passing by, I could see the shadows going through the bushes like they're passing me. And the next thing I knew, I get out of the bushes and I book it into the apartment that my parents are in. And I remember just running into my room, and that's the memory. Okay, it ends there. But as I'm working on the extraterrestrials in the Hudson Valley, I will say I started having dreams. And I have a dream, and it's that memory from childhood playing over again. I'm outside, the car pulls up, the present's watching me. But as I look into the driver and passenger seat, the heads turn and they're no longer human beings. They're grays. They're grays with big black almond eyes, and they're looking at me. And telling the story, the hair stands up on my arms because then I follow through the same thing. I run into the bushes, the shadows go past, and I'm back in the apartment. So as I'm talking to my friends that are, researchers in this subject and experiencers, they're like, that's, typical like abduction suppressed memory that you're displaying, something that, it was, okay for you to like make them human and just kind of block that memory off like a screen. They call that a screen memory. And I'm still exploring that in the project that I'm working on now. But I've always felt connected. I've always felt that yearning to learn about extraterrestrials and learn about the waves of the different time periods, beginning in Roswell and going all the way up into the modern, ufology. But then also exploring ancient aliens and going back further and just diving down that rabbit hole and learning about it. So I just don't stop with spirit work. I, try to embrace all aspects of the paranormal world, and ufology is one of them. I mean, I'm so captivated by all different aspects of it, and sitting down with Strieber. I got to sit down with Whitley Strieber for a 2-hour interview for that book. And again, that kid who was in the library reading books at 10, 12 years old, his books were some of the books that I read. So it's like my journey went full circle. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful. And, that story, is something that, I've never really told anybody. So this is the first time that I'm sharing it. But it still haunts me today. I mean, it still makes the hair stand up.
Well, I have a question for you about that couple, and then I'm going to share, and then I'm going to ask the number one question that I've going to shoot at you. So, all right, my first question would be, do you think that something happened with you earlier on in your life that you have no memory of, even if it was a time lapse or a missing time, where you might have been potentially abducted yourself and something happened, but you have no memory of that, and when the car stopped and saw you, and then all of a sudden these people get out and they're kind of looking for you or whatever. You'd think that they would have been able to acknowledge the fact that you're behind the bush. But just the idea of it all. Sometimes these things follow a person just to, whatever. What are your thoughts about, I'm not going to call it targeting, but kind of targeted. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that you might have been abducted at some point in your life that you have no memory of, and they were just basically acknowledging the fact that, oh, there he is, or whatever, and then they just kind of went? What do you think?
Yeah, I as I'm exploring this for the project that I'm working on now, another memory from school comes to mind, where I'm sitting in class, and this is when the teachers had, the erasers that they had to wet, and they were wiping the board. As they're wiping the chalkboard, a gray alien head is literally like, wet with the eraser, and it's just how the water hit the board. I'm literally looking at a gray head with the almond eyes looking right back at me, and none of the other kids in the class like noticed it. Mm-hmm. And I remember almost like looking like, do you see this? And it only lasted for about a few seconds because it was drying. But again, it's like, how is this happening here? And having that interest was such a spark, and wanting to read about this stuff that, where do you have that interest really like come from, and this yearning. I remember in all these different classes, I would be reading books on Roswell and the Encyclopedia of Extraterrestrial, and my teachers at the time were like, what are you reading? But I wanted to learn more about it. So I think that too. And as I'm growing in the spiritual world, I find that the dead and the ETs aren't so far apart. We're just communicating with a different form of energy, if that makes sense. So as we're diving into this and we're opening up for our mediumship and our psychic abilities, I personally believe that the extraterrestrials, the ETs, are actually a part of that. They're higher ascended beings, okay, than the earthly realm, but they're there too. So as we're opening up to it, we're letting that conscious flow into these galactic beings, right? So why not would we be having these experiences, especially if they know that you're open to it?
Mm-hmm. So I've had at least 3, 4, 5 otherworldly experiences in a variety of ways. The one that I'm going to just share with you briefly, because it could go on for days. Most people that have been following me know this story in and out. But I had a handprint show up on my body and elongated fingers. The middle one here, the one here, was very predominantly crooked. It was not my hands. I don't have crooked fingers. It was not anything involving me at all, actually. It went under debate with about 5 different psychics, thinking old woman, succubus, alien, blah, blah, blah. And one said a mantis being and all this sort of thing. And so how that occurred was I went to bed one night. It was 2 a.m, laid down. Sniffer was pretty good. Thought it was my husband's shampoo, something very wretched, just awful, smelly, perfumey, whatever it was, just came through. And I'm not in that house. That was my former house because it was very otherworldly after some point. But anyway, long story short, the next day I discovered the embedded blood red handprint on my body, and that started me out in my journey of wondering how that handprint got there. And then I kept saying to the universe, where did it come from? Where did it come from? Then I talked to psychics. They all gave their impressions. And it was up till one day, months later, where I had a dream. And in my dream, I saw my husband's, what looked to be like his cousin's daughter, kind of like 28 years old, kind of walking away from me in the dream. She looked like she had pants on, regular clothes, long brown hair kind of pulled back. But when she turned around, her eyes were the big, huge, black, almond-shaped eyes. She had a black COVID mask over her face. And I woke up, I was in full of sweat, I was screaming, I don't ever want to see you again, I don't know what you are, I don't ever want to see you again. And keep in mind, I had a lot of experiences in that house. But what I'm getting at here is the fact that somebody had said, I just heard this recently, or read somewhere, and I don't know, the questions are coming at you right now.
Right.
So here I am, terrified. I remember that. Oh, and by the way, the black COVID mask, the handprint was over. I had COVID pneumonia, and I had I had regular pneumonia over here. And this one was told that it was going to take years, probably years, to get it to unclog, and that I may have experiences. But after that handprint went over here, it's gone. I'm completely unclogged. It's miraculously healed. Okay, so when I talked to this one psychic, he said, could be a mantis being because healer. I didn't know anything about what that was. Hands, the fingers certainly look like a mantis being and everything. But then lately I've been doing conferences and giving presentations, and I'm beginning to wonder if it wasn't a gray trying to disguise himself. But we broke it down to the fact that this COVID mask and kind of like things that gave a hint, as to what it was doing and why it was there and all that sort of thing. So here's my question for you. I read that when you dream, and I don't know, I disagree with this interpretation from somebody.
Right.
That you only see in your dream people or whatever that you have met before. And I had a dream the other night with a full room of older women, kind of laughing and, that kind of thing. And the next day, very first thing on my Facebook page was something to do with laughing women. It was just like, I just dreamt of that. But the thing is, I didn't recognize any of those women at all, but they claim that you met them before. What are your thoughts on that? Because if I did beg the universe. I did. Who put that on my body? Tell me. Where is it? And they showed me. And then I'm like, okay, that was enough. I don't ever want to see you again. And I haven't. So what are your thoughts on the fact that when you dream vividly like that you have actually met these people before in some other way?
Perhaps it could be a past life. Perhaps these people were in our lives at other time periods, and different lifetimes that they appear in these dreams again. Could also show why somebody who was born in 1990 has this strong fascination with the Civil War, and when they dream battles. There's kids that know things about the Civil War, that they have no idea of knowing. At 12 and 13, they're talking about flank lines. And where does this come from? Where does fears come from? Fear of drowning. And then you go through past life regression and you find out you drowned, on the Titanic. Or, there's different things that spark our interest in this lifetime. So that I definitely find a way creeps into the subconscious. So when we're sleeping, it's easier to do that slideshow, that clairvoyant slideshow, right? But there's also things where I feel like you don't need to meet people before to have them appear in your dream, because it could be going more linear to the future, where we're going beyond right now. We're going beyond this year. Sometimes people go to sleep and they go, I dreamt of my future wife. Mm-hmm. I at the time was with a woman with brown hair, but I saw this woman with blonde hair and she was holding a baby, and all of a sudden 5 years later, he's married to the blonde hair woman and they have a baby. And she looked exactly what she looked like in my dream. So it's amazing the way our mind works. We're still learning how the human brain works. So I definitely feel that we need to be open to these ideas instead of being shut off by them and saying, no, it don't work like that. This is and being open to the possibility of past lives. And this is where a lot of trauma comes from that we live in our present life with, and interests and things that people are doing now. So I definitely feel that the dream state is definitely an easier way for the subconscious, for the mind to kind of let you see that slideshow. Or if you're asking for future advice, when you close your eyes and you begin to go to sleep, say, I want to learn this. Can somebody in spirit come to me? That's another easier way to be open, is the dream state. It's an amazing thing. And you could go down a rabbit hole and read books on Brian Weiss, who's a prominent researcher for past life regression, and delve into how he interprets the dreams and what people are bringing into this lifetime from the past and going into the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I used to dream a lot, but it was negative dreams of, just people at work that were targeting me or trying to set me up or whatever. And the thing that I couldn't do is, as much as I took note of that, I couldn't stop it. That was the most heartbreaking thing. And I tried, that's when I actually started getting into psychics, because I started recognizing that in my dreams I was getting these warnings. And then I started going to some psychics and saying, I need help. I need to reverse this. I need to stop this. I don't want this anymore. I mean, I'm having these terrible, terrible dreams, and they're showing me my future, basically. And these people that were out to get me for jealousy reasons or whatever. There was nothing I was doing to try to cause any of this. I was just there. And so, that was the thing that I noticed. I could never stop it. I just couldn't. And I wish there was a way of doing that. Do you think you met those grays? That's what I'm asking about, that gray man woman that you saw when you're in the bushes. Do you think you had an encounter at some point in your life or previous, or even in the future, of that couple right there?
Yeah. Without a doubt, as I'm writing this book and I'm working with researchers, I'm working with regression therapists, there is stuff that's starting to come out where I'm like, wow, That's interesting. And there's a lot of screen memories, a lot of things that we just kind of, the brain just fixes a certain way so it makes sense to you, right? That you can go about your, every day and it don't affect you. And as I'm opening up to it with that possibility, and it's just really amazing how these little things that I experienced throughout my childhood and into adulthood are starting to creep in and just showing me like we're here through different points. And also with this last drone wave in Jersey that we had here, where there were drones, and I like to say there was 95% drones up there that the government was doing something, but there was that 5%. Okay, and I was out there a few nights where I witnessed that 5%, where you see the drone, and then also you see something flutter, and then go left, and then go right, and then shoot right up into a cloud and be gone. And I experienced a few of those nights. And it's almost a subconscious thing where you're asking, can you show me yourself? And all of a sudden you see these little lights start coming down and start dancing. And amazing. And it shows that telepathy, right? That, you're asking and then you're receiving. So they can hear us. So again, like how I said earlier, where the dead and the extraterrestrials aren't too far apart when we're communicating with that higher consciousness, I feel that that's a huge thing, is that mind to mind.
One of the things that I asked at a conference in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, probably more like 4 or 5 years ago now, I was so bothered. I didn't know if I was psychokinetic, if I was doing this, or if something else was watching me or around me and then doing. I'll give you some examples so it's a little bit more clear. So, key in the door, and this is a former home of mine. We'd always have the key kind of straight up, but it's just my husband and I, and we never went out that door ever. And so I'd look at that key, and then I'd look at that key, like I'd go into I call it the parlor room, and I would be looking at the door and looking at that key. Well, one day when I was in the parlor room, the key was like this. Yeah, and I said to my husband, "Did you go out the front door?" He goes, "No, I don't go out the front door. I haven't been out there, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, the key is like this." I said, "The key just can't turn itself. You have to literally turn the key." And so then I started noticing clock dials advancing 6 hours all the time in the parlor room, and things were starting to get active in the house, and I started to recognize stuff, and then I started getting touched, and all these things were happening in that house. And I was always confused by how to separate whether I was looking at the key and psychokinetically turning the key, catapulting a big bag. I mean, I've catapulted, or something did, a 25-pound bag, whoop, literally flying across the room. I could go on with all the types of abilities that I think I either had or something was watching me and then causing this stuff to do this stuff. Emil, by the way, my great grandfather, I acquired from him, and my husband refinished it, but a wardrobe, and we had it in my garage for a long time before my husband got around to refinishing it. And I walked out. This is when that scratching of the violin case was heard from the caretaker and everything. And we walked out to my car one day, and I kid you not, the doors were completely flung open. There was no way. It was completely stuck. You would have to get a screwdriver to push it in there to pull them back out to go boink, that kind of thing. And I absolutely screamed. And I said, "Oh my God." And I don't know. Have you heard of these crazy things before? Can you tell the difference between if someone's psychokinetic and whether or not something is literally there trying to prove its point? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's something there that's trying to prove a point. I mean, you could only be like, psychokinetic is a little bit of that spectrum, but when something is that blatant and that happening over and over again, and being that, it's definitely something is letting you know that presence is there, and you know that you're receptive to it. So they're just giving you that full, like, we're here, like we're here, we're coming in big time here because we want you to see that we're still here.
Yeah, gave me a lot of chapters in my books.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now. Lots of chapters because
And you're open to it. You're
oh
open
yeah,
to it.
I'm very open.
That's why it's always around you.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. The other day, just 2 days ago, I went into our pantry here. I'm in a brand new house built from the ground up. And there have been some things that have happened in here, particularly things that have gone missing and then reappearing in interesting spots in the house. And I went into the pantry and I bought this vinegar, and the thing was literally turned upside down on its cap on the bottom. And there's no reason why my husband and I would ever turn a vinegar bottle upside down on its cap. So I said to him, "Did you turn that vinegar bottle upside down in the pantry?" He goes, "No, we have a vinegar bottle in the pantry," that kind of thing. And I said, "Well, something's here because it was upside down on its cap." So whatever it is, likes to also amuse itself. And by the way, that sensation that I had felt during the show has not come back since we talked about that image that you showed everybody on the show. It's gone now, or it's at peace or whatever. But what's that?
It's almost like they get their point across. Like, hey, we're here, and this is what came through, and
yeah,
how far we are from each other. Your great grandfather, I would have no way of seeing his photo,
No, no, I'm looking right at it. Yeah,
no,
it's amazing.
That's their way of just showing you, like, we're here. The consciousness is still here.
Have you ever had things gone missing on you and then reappear back or reappear different spots?
It always happens to my car keys. Yeah, I mean, there are times, especially down here in my office, where I'll put something down from an investigation, and I'll come down and I'll be like, "Listen, I remember I put those K2 meters right on this table, and then all of a sudden, one's laying on the floor, or one's over by my other desk on the other side of there's always things, or sometimes a book is a little like ajar, and I have a 7-year-old, I have a 6-year-old. They're not reading these books and they're not reaching these high shelves. Mm-hmm. And I'll see a book pulled out. And that's my way of saying, maybe the spirit wants me to read this, or just open it up to a certain chapter and see what message that I get out of it. And most of the time, sometimes things freak you out. It's like, this means something, especially how this week is going. This page really hits home, So I almost feel like that's spirit's way, or whatever being is communicating with us through this, is getting that message through.
How many spirits do you think surround you? Do you think they just come and go? Do you think they're attracted to something? Do people bring them in with them? Do they come to your house when you do readings for them? Where do you think they're coming from? I
feel that spirit itself is around everyone and everything. Nothing separates us. They're not in this puffy white cloud and they're playing harps. I feel like it's energy. When you think of that person, that is your phone call directly to the other side. And it's up to them to answer. But they're truly a thought away. So when you're thinking about Grandma right now and you say, "Hey, Grandma, I really wish that you could give me a sign," she can answer you back this quick. And I've seen that where I am having a real rough day and I'm thinking about my loved one. And I said, hey, Grandma, I'm literally walking to my car. Can you give me a sign and make it a walrus? It's summertime. Where am I going to see a walrus?
Yeah.
In my car, turn on, the ignition. I Am the Walrus from the Beatles, right from the chorus, is playing on my car radio. I am the walrus. Mm-hmm. There, it stands right up because you're like, this took a minute and a half and I got a response that quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay? So when people go, are they always around us? Yes. They truly are. They're a thought away. It's consciousness. When you think of them, that is what connects, right? That thought connects to their consciousness. Mm-hmm. So think of them, speak to them, celebrate them, bake the cookies, talk about the memories. They're not gone. We lost the physical. The physical is, but with everything, the physical will leave.
Oh, that brings me to another question, though. People always ask this, especially with those that are very good at connecting with their loved ones.
Sure.
They want to know specific answers, like something stupid, like where is the diary hidden? And they very specific questions, things that that sometimes people can they expect that they expect an ongoing communication with their loved one to the point where they're going to tell them, well, what should I do? Sometimes they'll give you kind of an answer, but sometimes they won't. So what is your thoughts about, yes, it's over there by the gun cabinet underneath the drawer and underneath the third foot. I mean, it's almost like they won't tell you those types of details. What are your thoughts?
For me, it's the ultimate game of charades. And if you're good at charades, you'll be really good at conveying this information that comes through. And sometimes mediums do get the symbolism or the interpretation of what we're seeing wrong. We're doing our best to process this coming in so fast to relay it to you. So as this information is coming in and I'm saying, okay, she's showing me the floorboards and I see a carpet and I'm being drawn into a corner and I want to lift the floorboards in that corner. It could mean something totally different than what I'm perceiving it as. Mm-hmm. And also sometimes people want to talk about, can't you give me the lottery numbers? It doesn't work like that either, because that doesn't matter where they are. Okay. Mm-hmm. And to them, they come through with love. They come and they show experiences. Mm-hmm. And for what I gather is the memories really matter that we make here. The money means nothing. You can't take your fortune with you. You can't take your house with you. Any possession you have is gone. But the one thing that we do carry with us is our love. Mm-hmm. Okay, our love for a place, a love for our friends. And that love works as that connection to the living, mm-hmm. generations to come. And those memories that we made out of love are what also keeps us alive. Mm-hmm. And keeps us connected to those on the other side. So when you come into a reading and you start saying, well, can you give me the winning lottery numbers? It's almost mocking what's taking place. But ask for those memories. Ask, can he show me what we did in life? Because that's what matters. You know, oh, he's showing me you're out on the ocean and you're crabbing and it's like 1960. I see 65, and all of a sudden that hits home for them. That's the information that they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the hidden stack of money that's in the beams. Sometimes that does come through. Sometimes as the evidence is coming through, we're going to talk about, I feel like he's saying that, you know, people are upset about money. And, you know, they're saying to get over it, move on, patch up those relationships. Because again, it doesn't matter. Okay. It doesn't matter ultimately in the grand scheme of our human existence and our soul's existence. Mm-hmm. You know, everything is put in our, you know, path to learn. This is in all the lectures that I give, I always say, this is Earth School. Okay, this is Earth School. We're all in this classroom and we're learning everything we possibly can, from greed, jealousy, learning how to, you know, love one another, accept one another. And it's a crazy world. Okay, Earth School is crazy, but it's developing our soul and progressing us along our soul's journey. So we're learning lessons every day, every lifetime. I feel that we do come back, you know, and it's a constant learning process. Mm-hmm. So when we're asking these spirits that have transcended and have moved on to this other plane of existence, and you start talking about, can you tell me where that Hot Wheels car was? It's just, yeah.
Richard, tell everybody how they can reach out to you, where they can find your books, websites, the whole 10 yards.
You can find me on all aspects of social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. My website, www.richardmoschella.com, has all my updated information, what I'm doing. You could get readings from there. I do virtual and in person, and it has all my events listed. And if you're interested in any of my books, you can log on to Amazon.com. They have them all. And there are also a few that you can purchase at Barnes & Noble. So check them out. And Kelly, thank you for having me on your show.
You're great. My God. I'm actually quite speechless regarding that picture. I'm glad we had a moment to do that. And I'm sure, yes, everybody, I'm going to be sending him the picture that will, he'll know, it'll match up with that face. Just, you'll see it and you'll see it too. And so, and again, we'll have to have him back for part 2. So on that note, Richard, thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.